Welcome to another Fantasy Goodfellas video where we talk about the top 30 running back rankings for week 16. You ready? Those Fantasy Goodfellas.
Rolling on the field.
Those Fantasy Goodfellas. All right, before we get started on this week's video, let's just take a look at some of the rankings from last week to see how everybody did. Because a lot of these rankings, it always is how they play out. No matter what rankings you are, let's take a look at them before we get started on this week's rankings. All right, the first thing we want to do is look. This is week 15 rankings. And the first thing we want to do is who was injured. And out of all these, everybody played, and this is what it looked like for week 15. You had Jonathan Taylor did not make the top 30. Miles Sanders didn't make it. Joe Mixon didn't make it. Isaiah Pacheco, Zonovan Knight, and Jamal Williams, Dante Foreman, DeAndre Swift, and Rashad White did not make it. Now, I also want to take a look at where they all ranked. So this is going to be the next thing. You can see right here, and who made the top 30. You can see by what their rankings were. They were kind of outside. Isaiah Pacheco just missed it. I don't do anything beyond that. Jamal Williams did not do well. DeAndre Swift just missed it. Now, the other thing I like to do is see who scored, because that's always important. Not only these rankings, but who scored to get in the top 30. And this is what it looks like. You got David Montgomery scored 2 touchdowns, and A.J. Dillon. And so if you look at their rankings, they're going to be ranked high because obviously the 2 touchdowns that you can see here. I got to make sure that we have a stat that has both. But you had David Montgomery was 6 and A.J. Dillon was 9. Those seems like, they're goal line type players. So getting the ball in short yardage. All right, now before we get started on this week's rankings, what I want to kind of do is tell you what you should expect in our videos. Basically, what we do is we give you the rankings, and then we're going to talk about the rankings, and then we're going to show you some stats to see how they've been trending and see if they can help you set your own lineups. But we'll talk about the rankings, show you some stats, and then see how they did. Okay. Now, let's get started. Coming in at number 1, we have Derrick Henry versus Houston. Now, Houston's not a very good team, so you expect Derrick Henry to run all over him. But look, this is what he did in week 15. He was ranked 4th. He had 1 rushing touchdown and 100 rushing yards. But look, this is the thing about Derrick Henry this year. It seems they're throwing him with some screen passes, getting him the ball, 59 yards receiving. That's huge. We're going to try to blast through this. At number 2, Christian McCaffrey versus Washington. 108 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. They're giving him the usage. 26 rushing attempts, 6 catches. He's just getting the usage out of anything. So I like Christian McCaffrey this week too. At number 3, Austin Eckler at Indianapolis. Austin Eckler, he's getting the usage in the 58 rushing yards, 1 TD, 12 receiving yards. He's just nice to steady. But look, he came in 16. There wasn't a lot of TDs to go around for the receiving, as Herbert didn't get in the end zone himself. At number 4, Josh Jacobs at Pittsburgh. The thing that even Richard's been saying all season is they've just been giving the ball to Josh Jacobs way too much. You got Devontae Adams. Switch it up. But if you look, he's averaging about 100 yards a game, and he's getting in the end zone fairly often, except he should be back in the end zone. I expect him to get at least a touchdown this week as well. At number 5, Nick Chubb, home versus New Orleans Saints. Nick Chubb, he can have stellar games. Last week he had 99 rushing yards, no touchdowns. If you look to see, is he trending down? No matter what's happened, that looks like a downward trend. Obviously, they got Deshaun Watson. They're going to try to throw it, but that looks like a downward trend to me. So to see Nick Chubb ranked fifth is a little much for me. I like to see him ranked a little lower. Still like him, but fifth is high. At number 6, Dalvin Cook, home versus the New York Giants. Dalvin Cook, look at this. 1 receiving touchdown, 95 yards receiving to go with 95 rushing yards. Now, no wonder he's the second-ranked running back. If you're going to give him that, he's going to do well. So the only thing is, again, this is crunch time. What do you expect him this week? So he's been kind of steady. Has he been putting them back to back to back? That's what I don't know. If you look at the touchdowns, he's getting about a touchdown, but the most he's scored in a row is 3 weeks. So it's not trending that way. But this is his fantasy points. Looks like every other game. I expect him. I'm not sure. I want to expect him to be ranked this high. At number 7, Saquon Barkley at Minnesota. This is going to be an excellent game. Very important game this week as you have both these teams fighting. But Saquon Barkley, I think he's bounced back. If you look at 87 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 33 yards, 5 catches. I want to look at, what do you expect from him? Seems like every couple weeks. Let's see if he can do it back to back. So early in the season he was doing fairly well, but of late, is he doing back to back? So I expect him to have another good game this coming week. I think he's going to get the usage. That's what's going to get him there. At number 8, Stevenson versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, they lost that game, but Stevenson was having a good game. Only until the end did he pass it. Really wasn't his fault, as Myers was the one who passed it to the defender, and they scored the touchdown and lost that game. But 172 rushing yards on 19 attempts, 9.1 yards per carry. That's excellent. Now, the question is, can he do it this week versus Cincinnati? I think Cincinnati has a chance to ball out. They're looking to ball out. Not sure, but I don't expect Stevenson to be in the top 10 next week. I think it's a little high. At number 9, Joe Mixon at the New England Patriots. Mixon, he's another player that can do fairly well, but what has he done of late? This is it. Joe Mixon had 1 outstanding game, another outstanding game, and it hasn't done much. So if you look around here, you expect him to get at least 70 yards and maybe a touchdown. I think he's due for a touchdown this coming week. Probably going to need him to score in short yardage. At number 10, Tony Pollard versus the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a very important game for the Dallas Cowboys. But last week, Pollard did 75 rushing yards, 31 receiving yards, but no touchdowns. That's what scares me. You look at Dak Prescott, he had 3 passing TDs. Is the ball going Pollard's way? And it was Elliott who got in the end zone. So, it's like one of those things. Are you going to pick Elliott or Pollard? Pollard or Elliott? They flip-flop. To be in the top 10, I would say one would definitely make the top 15. At number 11, Miles Sanders at Dallas. Now the question here is Jalen Hurts going to play? If Jalen Hurts plays, they should do well. Obviously, if they don't, that's going to be a big question mark. But if you look overall, last week, they had an outstanding game, and Miles Sanders had 42 yards. And this was a monster game, right? So, but the thing is Jalen Hurts is vulturing touchdowns. So if Jalen Hurts doesn't play, Miles Sanders should have a fairly decent game. At number 12, James Conner, home versus Tampa. James Conner, he got into the end zone, 63 rushing yards. If you don't know what he's been doing of late, this is what his rushing yards look like week over week. And if you want to see if he's getting into the end zone, he seems to be scoring touchdowns. You're going to need him to score a touchdown if you expect him to be in the top 12. At number 13, Alvin Kamara at Cleveland. Here's the question. Who's quarterback? You got Andy Dalton, but I think Taysom Hill threw a long bomb, and that's what makes the difference. So let's look here. I think Taysom Hill did score a touchdown. We don't have it in the stats, but overall, this is what you're looking at. Alvin Kamara had 91 rushing yards, 13 receiving yards. I think he's going to do fairly well. It's just that usage. He's got that usage. At number 14, you got Aaron Jones at Miami. This is what Aaron Jones did. Dylan got the touchdowns. Dylan got 2 touchdowns, whereas Aaron Jones had the yardage and a receiving touchdown. So what do you expect here? I definitely like Aaron Jones off of A.J. Dillon. And Green Bay's been playing well. At 15, Najee Harris, home versus Las Vegas. Najee Harris is picking back up. He wasn't doing well. Now he's picking back up. But look at this. Over the last 5 weeks, he's had some pretty decent games. And I kind of like what they got Najee Harris for this week as well. I like where he is in the middle of the pack. At 16, Ezekiel Elliott, home versus Philadelphia. Now, you're going to have 2 Dallas Cowboys runners within the top 16. Not sure I support that. I think that's a little high for Elliott, even though he scored a touchdown. He was ranked 15. I think one's going to be in the top. I just don't think both's going to be there. At 17, J.K. Dobbins, home versus Atlanta. So he's getting the yards. Again, 9.6 yards per carry. Not sure. That means he's had a couple long runs in there. Not sure he's going to get that this week. I think that's a little stretch for him. You look what he's done all season. He's picking back up. He's only had one other week 4. He's probably been injured in some of this, but that's what we're looking at here. I don't think he's going to get 125 rushing yards 2 weeks in a row. At number 18, you got Kenneth Walker at Kansas City. I think Kenneth Walker wasn't expected to play. He ended up playing. He did fairly well, both if you combine the rushing yards and the receiving yards. But how did he do overall? If you look at rushing yards, he's not getting the rushing yards. So let's look at the points. I just don't think Kenneth Walker, he's had that middle of the season, he's done really well, kind of tapered off a little bit. So I don't expect him to be there. I think that's a little stretch to be that high. At number 19, David Montgomery. Remember, David Montgomery had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Now he's going against Buffalo. The question is Justin Fields going to vulture some touchdowns from Montgomery? I don't expect Montgomery to do that well this week. And I don't think he's going to score 2 touchdowns for sure. So I think that's a stretch to put him in the top 20. I would put him down a little lower. At 20, Travis Etienne at the New York Jets. This is what Etienne did last week. He had 24 receiving yards, 103 rushing yards. But again, before I make my decisions, I'd like to see what's the trend. What's he been trending? It's been 5 weeks since he's been in the top 30. So, again, I think it's a stretch. Even though the team's playing really well, I think it's a stretch. Now, as a reminder, this is we're doing this live. So if you have any comments, you want to see anybody specific, we can show you. But what we're trying to do is show you some stats that you can help set your own lineups. Let's continue on. At 21, you got Isaiah Pacheco versus Seattle. Here's a player that's definitely been used a lot lately. And the question is it Pacheco? Is it McKinnon? I think they can go back and forth, but that's the way it looks this week. At the 22, Raheem Mostert, home versus Green Bay. I like Mostert. I know they give the ball to Wilson a lot too, but the question goes here is, can he get 136 rushing yards, 20 receiving yards? He definitely has the speed. You're going to need the speed playing versus Green Bay. I like him here. I like to see him ranked a little bit higher. At 23, Brian Robinson Jr., the big hat guy. Brian Robinson, he did 89 rushing yards 18 receiving yards. But if you're like me and don't know what to expect by looking at the stats, you got to look at how he's been ranked throughout the season. He's been I would see him middle of the pack, kind of like him, 22. I think you expect him to do that again this week. And let's move on to the next part. Is at 24, you got Jamal Williams at Carolina. The question is Williams was hot early on in the season because of his touchdowns. He was getting 2 touchdowns pretty often. He's there. I don't expect him to score a touchdown. I know that team's been hot, but I don't expect Williams to score a touchdown again. I think it's going to go Swift's way. I think that's a little stretch. At 25, Jerick McKinnon, home versus Seattle. Now, this is the thing, is you're expecting that offense to be moving. Now, Patrick Mahomes did have 336 yards, 2 TDs, 1 rushing touchdown. But look, it looks like a lot of people were fed. Let's look at how Travis Kelce did. I don't think you're going to get that much usage from the running backs every game. So I'm not sure that I want to see two receivers, 2 running backs in the top 30. Think that's a stretch. That's a good team. Still think that's a stretch. At 26, Rachaad White at Arizona. Now, Rachaad White, again, 38 rushing yards, 5 receiving yards. And this is what you can expect. But this is what you want to put in your top 26. I know it's Tampa, but Tampa's not playing all that well. I think it's a stretch to have Rachaad White there. At 27, Zonovan Knight, home versus Jacksonville. Again, let's look at, if you're like me, sometimes you see these rankings, it don't mean nothing. But he's had fairly well. So look at this. I think that's what we're looking at. I don't expect Zonovan Knight to do well again. I think you're just going off the past performance of late, and I think that's a little stretch as well. At 28, Deontay Foreman, home versus Detroit. Now, Foreman did not have a good week 15. Let's go. Now, week 14, he did make it. And week 13, week 12. So, if you look, this is what it looks like for rushing yards. We got to go to week 15. So he seems to be every other week doing well. So I expect Foreman to do better than his 28th ranked. At 29, DeAndre Swift at Carolina. I think DeAndre Swift is going to have an excellent game. I like him more than Jamal Williams at this spot, just because he can both rush and receive. So that's what I expect Swift to do much better. And at number 30, you have Latavius Murray at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, if you look at how they did there, 130 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 12 carries. I think if you look at his past performance, obviously that was his best game of the season, but can you expect the ball to go his way again? I think you can. So I think he's going to make the top 30, probably be ranked a little bit better. All right, that is your top 30 running back rankings for week 16. If you made it this far in the video, kudos to you. You must be in the playoffs. Good luck. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we're always looking for ways to improve our stat machine, so that way we can help you guys with your lineups. All right, thanks for watching. See you again next week. Those fantasy good fellas.
Boom, boom, boom. Rolling on the field.